This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. We speak from our personal experiences and opinions. The views expressed are solely those of the individual speakers and are not intended to malign any group, club, organization, or business. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another special episode of Children of the Form. Today, I have a former child of the form, and Betz. Oh, I guess I should have gotten your exact title because I just know that you work with neuroscience, but I don't actually know your exact title. So this is Ann Betz, and she's going to tell you the specifics of her title and what she does.
And probably my first response to that is titles are overrated, so I don't actually care. But what I do is I work with neuroscience and the intersection of neuroscience and human development. And I largely work with professional coaches, sometimes counselors, helping them apply current neuroscience to day-to-day challenges that their clients might be facing, like stress or communication, things like that. Like, how do we look at that from a neuroscience perspective? So what I've learned to say that I do is I do applied neuroscience, which is really different than like a research-based where you might be looking at something like Parkinson's disease or something like that. I'm really looking at how does this help us understand our own, brains and reactions and things like that. So
It's the actual science of the mind, not the woo-woo science of the mind
well,
that
as
so
much
many
as
like to talk about.
yeah, no, as much as I can. And I really, I'm very devoted to saying, here's what I like to think of it this way, Lindsey, okay, so here's what we know. Boy, this sounds a little bit like something I learned in the forum. But
Oh,
not quite
perfect.
not quite the same. It's like, okay, so here's what we know today. Here's what we kind of, or if I think about it personally, here's what I know about neuroscience and application. Here's what I don't know. And I feel like it's really important to be clear about that.
Yeah.
I'm very good with neurotypical. I know a little bit about neurodivergence, but it is not my area of expertise. Addiction is not my area. And I'm really clear, there's people that know a lot more about that.
And those are brains that operate differently, right?
Yeah, the more that I get into neuroscience, I just want to ask people, in what way are you my friend says neurospicy, in what
Yeah.
way are you neurodivergent? Because the idea that there are some commonalities, but there's a whole lot of variation. That's human. That's
Yeah.
just what it is to be human. But I think it's also really important to know what the edges of the profession are and what nobody knows yet. Like what kind of falls into this category of, and anything with the word quantum in front of it, I would put in the category of nobody really knows.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
people that are out there going, I'm going to teach you quantum manifestation, and this is all happening on the quantum field. I just think you're probably making a lot of money, but I don't trust you because it's not known. And anybody who really understands that whole area of things will tell you it's not, nobody really knows. So,
Well, and that's the difference between I think something that's legitimate and something that isn't, is that they're willing to acknowledge their boundaries,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
there are things that we don't know, and even there are things that we're unsure about, and we have theories about instead of acting like
right.
it's the
And
truth.
there are things that are, really interesting that are sort of emergent in the science, that the science just isn't quite there yet. We might not have the technology to do the kind of measurement that, just like years ago, we didn't have the telescopes to see the far reaches of the universe. We didn't have the level of microscopes to see deep inside. So, technology is part of what, in terms of what we know. There are things that we might want to be able to measure in 50 years that we can't measure now. So it's a fascinating field. It keeps me very humble. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Well, and I love like it's just ever evolving, right? So you're always learning new
I'm
things.
always learning new things, and sometimes I have to go back and go, "Oh, you know that thing that I told you was wrong or was right? Guess what? Tell you what,
I
I
wonder
was
if
wrong."
that's ever happened in Landmark.
Yeah, you know, and it's the humility that really to me marks, and so this is sometimes when I hear about, and we share a dear friend, Ann Peterson, and Ann has very worked very closely with Werner, and has talked about his level of intelligence and ability. I don't know. I have not worked with him in that arena, but I do believe it is a sign of high intelligence to be able to say, I don't actually know. Maybe somebody knows, I don't. Let's be curious about this. Let's actually look at the research and see if we need to change our minds about this,
Hmm.
rather than just get locked into a very strong cognitive bias that doesn't stand up.
Well,
So,
I think it takes emotional intelligence to
yeah,
do
not
that
just
too. That's a big part of it. And that's the part that I think is missing
yeah.
from so many of these leaders and groups like this is actual emotional
Emotional
intelligence.
intelligence, and I've been really interested in the intersection of empathy and conscience
Mm,
lately, part of my practice and part of what I do is I actually teach a course on working with relational trauma, which is generally we're talking about narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, people like that. And pretty much, and I think all the experts would agree to me, if you're leading a cult, you are going to be somewhere on that spectrum. You're going to be a narcissist, sociopath, maybe psychopath.
mhm.
And that's not just throwing names around. It's like, if you look at the behavior, that's what's going on. And one of the things that for years, I've seen in the literature is that it's about a lack of empathy, which
Mhm.
is true. It's like that's what enables people to do what they do is they're not feeling with other people. Now, but what I've recently seen come out in the research is it might be more accurately stated as a lack of conscience, which would include empathy. Empathy informs conscience, is
Oh.
part of it, but it's this interesting idea of really lacking a true moral center about what is and is not okay in terms of how we relate to other human beings. And so I like that because it's even bigger than just empathy. It's not just, oh, you don't have empathy, so you're willing to, yell at people and do these things, but it's this idea of you're not guided by a true moral code that is more than your own benefit.
Yeah, you can't feel outside yourself. Yeah. I'd really love to hear a little bit of your story about how you got into doing, I think it was est when you first
Yeah,
did
it
it?
was it was est. So we're back to 1982, and I'm pretty sure that that must have been the year. It must have been 1982, and I got into it through the Hunger Project.
Mm.
So I was living in Minneapolis and I was out I think the truth of the matter was, and this is, lots of people can relate to this, is there was something missing in my life. I was lonely. I was looking for community. I didn't have good community. I've always had a philosophical kind of view of life, which at age 18, and I was 18 at the time, maybe 17 even when first met these folks, I wasn't finding that among my peers. I
Mhm.
wasn't finding a place where I would really be having conversations of meaning and about what kind of world we wanted to have and like that. So I met this woman under a tree by one of the lakes in Minneapolis, Lake Calhoun. It's changed its name now. And she was just a bright light, and I signed her card for the Hunger Project, and then I got very involved in kind of her community, who
Mm.
was like people that had just come back from the Peace Corps and people who were really like cared about what I cared about.
And doing stuff too.
And well, at that time, the Hunger Project wasn't really doing anything.
Okay, okay. Right.
At
Right.
that
It was
time,
just signing cards, right?
cards. I mean, which
Right.
always confused the out of me. Like, I never really totally got it. Now, I think that has changed, to be fair. From what I've heard, Hunger Project actually does more real projects and all of that. But at the time, what was consistently said is we have enough food to feed everyone, and what is missing is the will to end hunger. So if we just get people, you know, that it is imprinted in my brain from
Oh,
17 years old. So we would fill out these cards and get people to fill out these cards because it was all about sort of this esoteric, energetic idea of somehow manifesting, creating the will. If we get enough people to care, something is going to happen on the energetic level and hunger's going to end. That was speaking of bullshit things that are not validated by science. No, that was
yeah.
that was the idea. But I really loved this group, and of course, everybody was involved in the Hunger Project, and they were involved in the S training, and they pushed me very hard to do the S training. Somehow I got the money, and I went and did the S training at age 17. Now, what's different than like your story and a number of the other children of the forum is I was a little older, and my family did not support it. This
Right.
was me doing something on my own because of this group, this, wonderful group of adults who were all at least 10 or 15 years older than me.
Oh,
That,
yeah, I could see some concern
yeah, that
happening out
I
of
wanted
that.
to be part of just this warm, vibrant, fun community.
And
And
were
that
you still
was,
living at home then?
yeah, I think I was living at home. It was right before I went to college. So yeah, so I did it at a pretty young age, but it wasn't I was not reinforced by my family, and I wasn't little, and
Mhm.
I did
Yeah.
the adult S training at
Right.
the
But
time.
you were still forming that frontal
Oh,
lobe, right?
oh my god. Yes, I mean, I
Yeah.
was still, thought I was a grown up, but
Yeah.
for sure was not a grown was not a grown up and very impressionable and um, very easily manipulated, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I thought I was all grown up at 14 too,
Yeah,
like,
don't we all, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and the adults around me thought, "Oh, yeah, sure, yeah, she seems very, mature and intelligent."
Well, I think that can be part of the trap. I mean, I think it really was for me was that the people that were involved in EST and later the forum just, sort of on the plus side, I guess, really saw me as being having more capacity, having more to contribute, you know, uh than necessarily the other people in my life. So that was very compelling.
So, you were 18, you did ask, what was your involvement? Some people dive right in
Yeah,
and
so
assist a lot.
I did it when I was in Minneapolis, the summer before I went out to go to school on Long Island. And they had given me a scholarship. This is place I knew I got a scholarship to a seminar.
Mm.
Because of course they want everybody to sign up for a seminar. That's really, really important. That's important for the leader's stats and all of that. And I
Oh,
was
yeah.
going off to Long Island and they got me enrolled in this seminar. But here, this like might be too much detail, but whatever. So in New York, and so where the seminars were done were not on Long Island, it was New York City,
Mm,
which was probably an hour and a half train ride from where I was, to get into the New York area center. And I'm a little girl from Minneapolis, right? So it's a big, scary New York City.
yeah, yeah,
And they did, like in most places, seminars are at night,
yeah.
right? But in New York, they had enough theater people who could not attend nighttime seminars. So they did a Friday morning seminar. one every, every rotation, every quarter, whenever they started new seminars, there would always be a Friday seminar. And because I had to get in from my college and back home on the same day, I signed up for the Friday morning seminar, which was called, I think we've talked about this, About Sex.
Oh gosh. Ugh.
So I'm 18 years old. I've just done the S training. I've never been in New York City. I'm having to navigate getting there. So, trains, all of that. I go and there's this seminar and we're basically watching porn. Because that's what the seminar was in those days. That's what the seminar was. It was really about your ability, I think. I'm making this up because I really don't know what the point was. But as I remember, it was about your, sort of prudishness and your ability to be with various manifestations of sexuality. And so they had heterosexual sex, they had homosexual sex, they had lesbian sex, they had two little beanbag frogs pretending to have sex. It was just, they had an orgy. They showed basically an orgy, and this was kind of full on. Now, the thing it wasn't really porn. It was meant to be more of like what I remember in the heterosexual sex. It was like a loving couple. It wasn't like a,
Right.
porn thing. It was meant to really show the experience. And that's what we did.
Okay, so from a neuroscience point of view, what is happening? What is happening to your 18-year-old brain while you're sitting in a room full of people being exposed to this really intimate act? What's happening there?
I think the programming is really about get over yourself. It's
Right, inhibitions.
yeah, I think that was the intent. Now, I had a very different upbringing. I had a very progressive upbringing. This is a whole other story, but my parents had an open marriage. And so there was lots of other information. So I don't think it freaked me out as much as it would have with someone who hadn't, like we lived in a commune for a while.
Right.
And it wasn't a cult. It was just like a shared house.
Yeah.
So I was used to people talking about sex around me. I mean, it was hugely inappropriate when I'm like
Right.
10 years old. I mean, there's that. But when I went off to this seminar, I think it didn't freak me out as much as it might have someone else from this, 18 years old from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
But one of the things that came up, I will share with you candidly. So one of the things that came up as I'm watching this or participating in this 10-week seminar, what are they, 8 weeks, 10 weeks? 10-week seminar, is I retrieve a memory that I have blocked. And the memory is of someone in my family who has been sexually abusive to me when I was like 10 or 11. And so I do believe in repressed memory because it absolutely happened to me and the other person verified it.
Yeah.
So, but it
Wow.
was like a door that was closed
Yeah.
in my mind, hadn't thought about it for years, and that door blew open. So this is part of the, criticism that we've had about the forum and about Landmark is that they don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So I'm a good student, though. I'm a participator. So this door gets blown open, and I'm like, oh, shit, I was sexually abused. Like that, like, oh, all comes back.
Yeah.
And so I share,
Right. Yeah.
because I'm a good participant.
Yep. Oh,
And
I
I'm authentic, and
relate.
I value authenticity, and it's not just to get brownie points. Like it really felt like an important, scary thing. I mean, I remember shaking and saying, and the leader said to me, thank you. What did you get out of it?
Ugh.
And this person who had sexually abused me would give me small amounts of money. And so I literally in that this, there is a part of me where I'm just sort of gently, compassionately like holding that small part of me. And there is, I just remember at 18 standing there in this this seminar leader saying, well, what did you get out of it? And I said, $1. It's so painful. It's so like weird, but also sort of funny in a weird way. And that's what
It's bizarre. It's just
bizarre, right?
bizarre. Yeah.
And because of kind of the way I said it and the way it was set up and the way they dealt with it, everybody laughed. They weren't really laughing at me. They weren't making fun of me, but it definitely, the message that I got is, this is no big deal. You got something out of it. You participated with this because you wanted $1. And so, get over yourself. Like, this is like, you're at choice. I mean,
Shouldn't
and
affect you.
all of that wasn't said directly to me, but that was kind of the impact of me sharing, and being at a pretty dang vulnerable age to remember that and share something like that, and then not have it held with really any degree of care or compassion.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
you're with a whole bunch of adults too, right?
Oh,
It's not like
yeah,
it's all 18-year-olds in there.
no, there's nobody else my age. It's all these gay performers,
Right.
many
So
of whom became friends. Um,
but you're also there's that added pressure, right, of, like, just trying to fit in or even
yep.
perform correctly, so you wanna get it right, so that you fit
Yeah, and
in.
I wanna have this not be I wanna buy into this idea that somehow I chose that, and somehow I could just choose to not have that be a thing, and, either, have a difficult conversation with this person, which I tried to do. And we have since done some better processing with a therapist.
Yeah,
That happened probably 10 years later. But
yeah.
at the time, I did reach out to this person and they were just like, what do you want from me? So it's very disappointing.
Ugh.
And,
It's just like nobody knowing what the hell they're doing.
no, and telling me, well, you should go complete with this person.
Yes.
And this person was not able to complete with me at that time or take responsibility. And it was so deflating. It was like kind of made it worse,
Yeah, of
I
course it
think,
did.
because first of all, I think they didn't know what to do, but they weren't even upset that they didn't know what to do. They were just like, oh, yeah, that's life.
It's like compacting trauma is what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
And the same with the abuse that I had in my childhood and when I went to the forum too. It was just like, okay, now I'm not supposed to be affected by that.
Yeah.
So it's doubly shameful when I'm feeling anything or upset
And
because I should be over it by now.
exactly. I should be over this. This should not be affecting me. And even to the point that when my ex-husband, years later, when my ex-husband and I went to couples therapy, I mean, he knew about the abuse, but when we went to couples therapy, I would not bring it up with the therapist because I did not want to be, how do I say it? I really uh, did not want to be seen that my inability to get over it was the source of the problem in our marriage. And it
Right.
wasn't.
Yeah, no, of
It
course not.
wasn't. And I was terrified that if I brought it up with the couples therapist, that that's what the therapy was going to be about. And his behavior was just going to be totally off the hook because
Right.
I'm the one who can't get over what happened.
Okay, so the whole getting complete thing, that I would love to just like riff on that for a minute because
Sure.
like, is that a thing? Can you?
I
Is it even a thing? Getting complete, having a conversation with someone about something, and then it is complete. Like, poof.
Probably not, because we don't have eternal sunshine of the spotless mind,
Yeah.
or what's the other one, severance, like our brains do not work that way. There's gonna be input from what happened. I remember my my son at one point, he was like 14 years old or something like that, and he was very self-empowered, and I had like yelled at him for something, and I went and apologized, and he looked at me and he said, "You do know that the fact that you apologized does not erase the fact that it happened." He
Bravo.
he's now a philosopher, he's
Oh, nice.
literally getting his PhD in philosophy, and, we saw that at a young age. But it was such a good, he's like, "I accept your apology, but you do know it does not erase that it happened." And
Yeah.
and that was such a useful, in some ways, perspective on things to go, yeah, I got to be responsible that I did that. And it's not just enough to say, oops, sorry, I lost my temper. And like I said, that still lives with me. Like, that's part of my responsibility on this world, is to live in a way where, um, I don't have the expectation that because of some communication I've had, that erases everything, because it doesn't.
Yeah. It's like it doesn't take into account that there's also a nervous system happening,
Absolutely.
over there, not just like
Yeah.
a cognitive processing, but
Yeah.
there's other things to the body that are processing that, what happened.
Yeah, that are living, and so to that end, there are things that you can do that, and I know you know this, but there are things you can do that kinda damp down the fire.
Hmm.
And that's how I think about getting complete. I think about it more for me than, I have to be, whatever that means, complete in every relationship. I'm going to be listening for and watching for if there's something, if the energy's off.
Mhm.
And one of the things I've had to learn over many, many years is just because the energy's off doesn't mean it's my fault.
Yes, like, there is actually 2 people in a
Yeah.
conversation, right? Which then comes back to the whole 100% responsibility thing, which it
Well, and
also
there's
doesn't exist.
No, and that's a huge soapbox for me, but there's 2 people in a conversation. There's also another person who's living a whole context that you may or may not have any idea about.
So
And
true.
so, there are times where, I went through this with a friend, gonna say, like, maybe 18 months ago or something, where she was just a little off. She was a little off. She was, a little harder to reach emotionally, and I did spent some time spinning in terms of, was it that conversation? What did I say?
Mm,
Like, was it this one? What
yeah.
did I do? Well, I come to find out later that she has been holding a very important secret for someone in her life that she did not have permission to tell.
Oh,
Had nothing to do with me.
yeah, right.
But it had an impact in terms of her, her own feeling of feeling light and easy and playful and joyful,
Yeah.
because she was holding something that she had sworn she would keep secret.
Yeah, literally weighing her down.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I think about. That when things are energetically off, maybe you did something, and maybe there's something else going on that the person doesn't feel good about telling you right then,
Yeah.
or is even aware of that
Yeah.
it's a problem. So,
I think that's one of the other things that I found Landmark trained in me is like this feeling of certainty that I know what's going on with others and I know what's going on with me. Like it all is gonna break down into one formula or another, right? They're either this or that.
and that I actually so sort of to that end, I have a dear, dear business partner who I've been business partners with for 25 years, and she's a really good friend. And I went through a relationship with someone who I later figured out was definitely checked all the boxes for narcissistic personality disorder. And that's how I got into studying narcissists and sociopaths and relational trauma. And I thought, Lindsay, that I was doing fine, that I
Mm,
was compartmentalizing, that it was just kind of a somewhat difficult relationship,
mhm.
right? And we were leading a class together, and it was the end of the day, and I came back and I sat next to her and I'm like, "This class is usually really fun. It wasn't fun this time." And
Yeah.
she looked at me and she said, "It's because you're bringing your bad relationship into our relationship." And I was
Oh.
like, first of all, I didn't realize I had a bad relationship. Shit. I
Yeah.
literally went, Lindsey, I'm one of those people who has a bad boyfriend. Oh my God.
And it wasn't until that moment that you realized
No, and
it?
I did not realize how much it was leaking because I was protecting, not even so much, protecting his reputation or anything like that. I was protecting myself.
Mhm.
And if I really talked about everything, then I was sort of like, "Oh, I'm gonna be, I'm not a victim. I don't wanna complain about him. If I
Mm.
can't do something about it, I shouldn't be talking about it," all of that. And what was great about it, she felt so bad that she said that, and I was just like, "No, that was
Yeah.
absolutely,
That's a good
that's a
friend moment.
oh my god, good friend." One of those times where straight talk was
Yeah.
exactly what was needed. Um and from that moment on, I was like, "Okay, so here's what's going on." Like, now floodgates are open,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
she was on my side, and she was my partner in helping me get through it and figure it all out and all of that, and that changed everything. But this is back to, I did not know that I was being any different.
Yeah.
So the idea that I know what's going on with myself or I know what's going on with anybody else, I think that's arrogant. And
Yeah.
maybe we came out of the forum feeling sort of arrogant about things like that.
Yeah, and one thing I've realized too is that, like, I had 2 ideas mixed up. I thought that I was being really thoughtful and I was really aware, but what actually was happening was hypervigilance. So, it's that, response from trauma where it's like, I have to notice and be aware of everything going on so that I can be safe, right? So that I can act accordingly and take care of nobody ever get upset, nothing bad ever happen, right? Constantly this feeling of, like, managing or handling things, and I thought that was being thoughtful, taking care of people, taking care of myself, taking care of the environment, but it was really just out of panic.
Well, and you're making me think of, so one of the things that happened is I went and did this seminar, and then, as weird as it was and all of that, I still really liked being there
Mhm.
because, people were up for deep conversations, and we
Yeah.
had those in the seminar, and, and it had just a different tone than anywhere else I'd ever been in my life. So I started volunteering a lot. I moved into New York. I spent a lot of time at the center. I went on staff for a period of time to do a special project. So I was there a lot, to the detriment of, I ended up just dropping out of that college program because
Mm.
Landmark was way more compelling,
Right.
at
And I'm
that
sure
time.
they encouraged that too,
Oh,
hey?
yeah, and there's an exception to that. It's quite interesting. But when you talk about vigilance, and there can be the vigilance from, childhood, which I have as well from childhood, it had nothing to do with Landmark. But I think about being in the New York area center, and um, there was people scared me. I
Yeah.
was terrified almost all of the time because there were people who yelled, people who stomped through the center in their Norma Kamali dresses. That's what I remember from the time. It was all about Norma Kamali dresses. Stomping through the center, pissed as hell, I don't even know what at, and it was for me, like I remember this one forum leader would stomp through the center. She must have had some center responsibility or something like that.
Mhm.
Stomp through the center and everything she was a big woman. Everything would shake, literally shake, and the center manager would yell, and at some point, everybody would have to get on the phones. And when I was on staff, my boss, who was actually a pretty nice woman, she basically said, "Look, this is a short-term project. You cannot pull my staff to be on the phones to do enrollment because we are on a short-term timeline." And so
Mm.
we got out of that, which was really good because I was terrible at enrollment and I was terrified of it.
I hated it.
So but that was, everything would shut down, everybody on the phones,
Yeah.
all about enrollment. And so I think my nervous system, just being in the center, it was both kind of exciting and compelling and terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like that, adrenaline burst you get when something scary or bad is happening, and then you operate on a higher level because 'cause you've got this
You can't
burst.
do you can't do that all the time.
No.
We're not
No, it's for
designed
emergencies.
to do it all the time.
Yeah.
That's when you get, if you have to operate at that level, what you see is adrenal fatigue.
Well, yeah, it's autoimmune
Yep.
diseases.
Yeah, because the cortisol levels are going up,
Yeah.
which is gonna be shutting down your, immune response, your immune system to some degree. Just everything becomes about survival in
Yeah.
that moment, and then the other thing that I now know about the brain is none of us are doing peak performance. You can't. This part of the brain, this higher brain prefrontal cortex that you really need for thoughtful planning and decision making and things like that. One of the things that happens if you've got a lot of adrenaline bursts coming through is you overload the neurotransmitters in that part of the brain, and you cannot think as clearly. You can only follow the
Tunnel
program,
vision.
tunnel vision, do what exactly you're being told to do. There's no room for creativity, and there's really no room for questioning anything.
Mhm.
It's just head down, do the thing. So
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that happens to staff is they lose their discernment and their, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? And the ability to think analytically.
Yeah, or even see, like, the bigger picture too,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's just so pigeonholed, everything is. Yeah, which is, like, the irony of that, that we think that being on staff is, like, this expansive thing where you're really taking on the world, when really you're just getting into this really teeny tiny bubble.
Right, because that's all the room that's there, and the other thing that will compromise this part of the brain is lack of sleep, lack of good
Mm,
nutrition,
yeah,
stress, constant stress, all of that. It it's one of those, excuse me, interesting ironies is that if you really want peak performance, you give people space. You
yeah,
give a lot. You give yourself space. You give your mind time to wander. You don't keep the urgency pedal to the metal all the time. You use that sparingly. And that's when you get a brain that's super we might have been able to come up with really creative ideas to fill courses, creative ideas to enroll people, creative ideas to, you know, do things. Everybody was too stressed to have any other idea other than get on the phone. Here's your little card. Get this person to sign up.
yeah, yeah. It's so maddening.
It's
Just
maddening, and I think this is part of the lie that this is this completely transformational thing, and whatever happened peripherally around that is justified because of such amazing transformation. When I look at the brain state that it puts staff into or heavy duty volunteers, very similar because they don't make a distinction.
yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter if I'm
And you
paid.
can volunteer 40 hours a week or
Uh,
more.
and I did.
Yeah.
And even the brain state of what the process of the weekends creates, which we know, like, people have probably heard of. John Hunter has done some things about how the weekend is designed to sort of create like a manic episode, and that's why you feel you've been transformed. But I would say there's other things too. I have put together some thoughts about what is all of the neuroscience impact. I think John Hunter's work is great. I really like
Mhm.
him. I think it's brilliant. I think
Yeah.
he nails it in terms of this idea of this transformative experience, which doesn't last.
Yeah,
But
the,
I
like,
also
dopaminergic effects
Yeah,
happening.
it's the
Yeah.
high, it's the we're gonna pressure, 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 all of this dopamine and adrenaline, and then we're gonna release, and you're
Yeah.
gonna feel so much better, and all of that. That was very oversimplification of
Yeah, but a
research.
good one,
Sorry,
good
God.
one.
There's also things like, Lindsay, I'm sure you remember this, but I did a lot of like assistant forum supervisor, and I was at a lot of forums, and it's not over till it's over.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
over till it's over. And if that's 11 o'clock, that's fine. If it's 12 o'clock, that's fine. You better be back here 6 o'clock. For the volunteers, you're back at 6 or 7 the next morning. But even for the folks in it, they're not getting the sleep they need to think clearly.
Mhm.
and the pressure to share and comply and the social pressure and the feeling that, well, you could choose. You could, you don't have to acquiesce to chocolate or vanilla, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to go, well, I chose because I chose. Like you could hold out for yourself. You have free will. Yeah, but you've got 200 people eyes on you who all want to go home.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. There's so
But
many
that's their
things they
choice.
don't take into consideration. Yeah. Part of my healing has really been working on taking urgency out of my life as
Oh,
much as
good.
possible. Like, and do I feel like this has to be done like right now? What is the panic about? What is the need for urgency? Because so much was, well, if something happens, you handle it now, right? Like everything is, you got to be on top of it. If there's something out of communication, you got to handle that now. And how much that stopped me from ever communicating because I would be like, "Okay, I have to do it now, but I have to do it right. I've gotta figure out the way to be the most responsible in
Right.
this." Even though I'm the one that's upset, I have to be responsible for my upset in my communication, um, and it just led like, it was like this downward spiral in my brain that just left me going, "I don't know what to say, so
I
I'll
don't
say
know what
nothing."
to do because it's not
Yeah,
easy to see. One of the
but still feeling that urgency inside, like, still always feeling like I have to get this done, but feeling no ability to do it the right way.
Oh, that makes so much sense, and let's talk a little bit about, the particular impact that this has on a young person's brain.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share that when I'm working with people who are coming out of trauma, or, healing from trauma, one of the metaphors that I really have come to love is the idea of the snow globe, that as long as you're in the system that is shaking your snow globe, you
Mm.
can't see what there is to do or what you
Yeah.
need. It's like walking in a fog. And so, like, when I'm working with people that are in maybe they're married to a narcissist or they're in a narcissistic workplace or toxic workplace, one of the things that people say is, can't I just do my work and not have to leave? Right. And the
Yeah.
answer is no.
Yeah.
You can't, because what happens is, as much as you're trying to be strong and do your healing, what happens is they are constantly shaking your snow globe. And it isn't until you get away from it that your snow globe gets a chance to settle and you can even see what it is you want to say or what isn't right about the situation. What was it about that wasn't right?
It's almost like, your environment dictates your experience to a certain extent.
This is the I mean, who knew, right? Well, this is the soapbox that I'm on right now of this idea of 100% responsibility.
Crazy.
And the thing I just wrote a post that I need to edit, but I titled it Cui Bono, which is
Yeah.
from the law, that literally means who benefits.
Right.
So, because I think systems benefit from whether it's you know ca- uh, for-profit companies or personal development, they are all have now this has become part of the fabric of Western life. It's your responsibility. We will give you resources maybe to help you personally. So we know you're in a high stress environment, Google or whatever. So search inside.
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
gonna do
yeah.
mindfulness,
Yeah.
right? And that's gonna help you with your stress, and we're gonna give you that resource rather than saying, "Why is it structured this way? Why
R
is there this urgency that might not need to be there?" I think that's part of what we're seeing in Landmark today is the there's some consequences on the table that just can't get ignored. And I think part of that has to do with, I'm not saying anything original here, but has to do with as more information has come out about cults in general,
Mhm.
that we're seeing, oh, this fits in here. And this isn't just this thing on its own, but it actually fits the pattern
Yeah.
of these other things. There's just an accumulation of evidence of harm.
Yeah. Yeah. Which brings me back to what you're talking about. We could talk a little bit about the relationship that you got into that was with a narcissist and how you feel like your education from Landmark early on
It's all
impacted that.
Landmark's
It is.
I mean,
Uh,
that's but
I'm sure there were things though that you learned that
yeah,
contributed to letting off a narcissist for a long time.
yeah, absolutely. And this is maybe a good time to bring in that um we are all susceptible to manipulation. And the more we learn about cults, the more we learn that if we think we're not susceptible, or might even be more susceptible.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not that it's just, only kids, but there's something about how the brain is developing in the just throughout childhood, and really doing a ton of development up through age 25, and then we still continue to grow and change and take things on. But if you think about that, when we're in our teens, when we're children and teens, our neurons are really bushy. We got lots of neurons in our brain. And I think of that as there's just a lot of potential ways things can go.
Hmm.
And one of the things that young people are doing in their, mid to late teens to early 20s is the brain is deciding what it needs to keep and what it needs to get rid of. So there's a process called pruning. And
Right.
what pruning does is it makes other, if all the available energy has to go to everything, then it's diffused, which is why little kids, you're like, why can't they focus? Well, because that's not their job yet.
Right. Right.
Their brains are, they're on the one hand learning their times tables, and on the other hand dreaming of fairies. That's their job. But as we get into our late teens, early 20s, the brain is saying, this is a really important neural pathway. You haven't used these other potentials for a while. Let's prune that away. And you get sort of strengthening there. So I think when you're exposed to particular teachings at that age, and is particularly, like in your case, younger, and then repeated at home,
Hmm.
and a number of the other folks that I've met through you, that's true for them as well. Very young when they, maybe did the children's program, and then parents were into it. And so you're hearing these aphorisms and these beliefs, not only at the center, but also at home. The brain is saying that's important. We're
Yeah.
hearing that all the time. So pay
Life
attention.
is empty and meaningless, and it's empty and meaningless, but it's empty and
Right.
meaningless. I heard that way before I ever did the work because it was just floating around my house all the time.
Ride the horse in the direction he's going. What the fuck does that mean? Do you remember Werner's little brown book?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is dating me, but back in the day, there was this little brown book. It was about this size, maybe a little bit bigger, and it was full of Werner aphorisms.
Oh God.
Each one to a page, printed on creamy paper. And if anybody who's watches this remembers that, please put in the comments. I can't remember what it was called. I might even have one in a box somewhere. Maybe I can
Oh, I
sell it.
would love to see it.
Maybe I can sell it on eBay. But one of
Totally.
these little aphorisms was ride the horse in the direction it's going. In other words, don't make a fuss.
Yeah, like, I
Don't
don't
question
know.
anything.
It just really sounds like something a white dude would say.
A white dude in charge of everything. So
Yeah.
one of the beliefs that, I mean, there's a number of them, and this kind of goes back to the narcissistic relationship. Something that I feel like really got imprinted with me is you keep your word.
Yeah.
You promise to do something. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if the circumstances change. It doesn't matter if, it wasn't the job that you thought. It doesn't matter. You gave your word. You, no matter what, you keep your word. Now, there's an aspect to that. I don't know, Lindsay, what do you think? Is there a 20% truth to that being a helpful thing?
Of course, there is yeah, there is a nugget of wisdom in that.
Yeah, that was, coming from a family who didn't have like a strong morals. I mean, not that they were immoral, but I just wasn't taught some of that
Hmm.
just wasn't in my world anywhere else.
Well, I grew up like that too. And I think one thing, my guess anyway, is to be a kid like that where you don't have a lot of rules and boundaries, you're craving it, craving it. So when something comes along with structure and rules and boundaries, it feels really good. Being kind of like free was kind of fun as a teenager, but not really.
No, because it ends up feeling lost.
Yeah.
And I later in And then I'll talk about how this impacted the
Yeah.
narcissistic relationship. Maybe it's obvious. But later in my life, one of my very first jobs was I worked for a think tank that researched youth development.
Mm.
And I remember having this conversation with my boss who was quite wise about this. And I'm like, boundaries and doesn't that restrict people? He's like, no, like kids, because part of their research was that was one of the things that kids really need. And I
Hmm.
remember thinking, yeah, do they really? And he was like, oh, that is how kids feel safe. And I wonder, I never felt safe because
Yeah.
I didn't know where to stop. And so, yeah, I think coming into a place that says, and for me, part of what worked is it didn't feel like these were sort of arbitrary rules,
Yeah. No.
right? Like
Yeah.
being part of the army or something. It felt like, what is your promise based on the potential of who you could be, you know? So we're going to reach for the stars and you are keeping your promise. So it wasn't like this external, you have to wear this uniform, which wouldn't have worked for me, but it's really, Anne, you have such potential. I know you can fill your logistics team this weekend. What's your promise? I know you can do it. I'm going to go get 7 people by the end of the day. That's me, making this promise. And,
Yeah.
sometimes I did. Sometimes that kinda called me forth,
Yeah.
but it stayed super imprinted with me to the point where as life changed, I got more information about something, um, it was very hard for me to not continue to fulfill a promise.
Right.
And when I was with this guy who turned out to be a narcissist, part of the tape that was running in my brain sort of even below consciousness was, "You can't give up on this,"
Mhm. Right.
you
Well,
know?
anything can be worked out in communication, right,
And
Anne?
and anything can be worked out in communication, and you just have to find the right skills to that was the other piece of it is, this idea that yes, 2 people just need to you need to figure out how to communicate this,
Mhm.
which I do believe if you have 2 people who have a conscience.
Yeah.
I think it's possible to have a difficult conversation and, I was listening to 2 young women, like, negotiate a trip the other day. I just happened to be overhearing them, and they were negotiating, and one wanted to stay in Santa Fe, and one wanted to hit the road, and they're having this, like, and it was really it was fascinating. But it was clear they really loved and cared about each other,
Right.
but each had very strong opinions and they're trying to negotiate and they're trying to gauge, you know, the degree to which it would be an upset to either stay or,
Mhm.
and not hit the road as early and all of that. And, that's communication skills. They
Yeah.
both had quite good communication skills, but they had to navigate like disappointment no matter what the outcome was. And it was fascinating to hear them kind of, these are like late 20s, like try to navigate this. It was absolutely fascinating. They did, you
And
know.
well, this is one of the biggest surprises of life is finding out that people who haven't done Landmark have great communication skills,
They
and people who
do.
have done Landmark don't
Oh, they don't.
necessarily have the best. Like, it was like finding out the up is down. It was like, "What?"
Well, there's this whole us and them that to me, if I look to see what is the evidence that Landmark is a cult or very culty, part of it is that it supports and reinforces this idea of kind of the haves and the have-nots in terms of transformation.
Yeah, oh,
That
totally.
we are the chosen ones, everybody else is, a muggle,
Yeah,
basically.
we've got transformation. They're just wallowing in the mire of consciousness.
They're just unconscious, and I think that was something it took me a long time to eradicate,
Yeah,
to burn off this idea that, somehow I was superior than rather than just seeing, no, there's so many paths to awareness. There's so many, you know, interesting people, and there's all these people and we're hearing more and more about this every day. There's all of these people in high level spiritual leadership who are predators,
yeah,
and kind of go, okay, we really need to get rid of this idea that anybody deserves to be on a pedestal no
yeah.
matter what they've done, because there is some really creepy backstories going on.
Yeah, it's really coming out. It feels like there's a reckoning kinda
Yeah,
happening in the
I agree.
whole sphere of it, which is fantastic.
I mean, when I think about things like this, Lindsay, and I'm very in love with science, and love the ability to parse through these things. But when I think about how everything has happened, I'm just like, I think the only explanation is something's happening with the planets.
Yeah, totally.
I really don't know a better explanation, but it
Yeah.
does feel like a great turning of something, and I don't, there's a part of me that says I don't necessarily believe this is just a coincidence, but
Mhm.
we may not. Maybe we'll never know, but yes, I think it is a great reckoning. But what I was gonna say, so this idea that, I can work this out in communication, so, I have these skills, I should be able to deploy these skills with this person. The other thing that really kept me stuck, and this isn't tell me if this is a landmark thing or not, but it was this idea of, the shadow, and that whatever I was judging this other person for, the only reason that I was judging him was that there was something unhealed in me.
Yes.
And that's very Debbie Ford, who was big in the 90s, this idea of shadow coaching, and they
That
used to
concept, I think, has fucked me up the most.
say more. I'm sorry, but say more.
Yeah, no, you go ahead and then I'll say,
Well, I think it really fucked me up because
yeah.
every time he would do something that I would just go, like, "What is going on here?" I would think, "Okay, how is that true about me?" I'm just judging I wouldn't even see it if it wasn't like,
Mhm.
he would spend money really recklessly, which made me very nervous because I would think, "Yeah, at some point, supporting us is gonna be on me, and I don't really want that." 'Cause he was just burning through his money, didn't have a good steady source of income. Then I would say to myself, "Anne, you don't always make the best decisions about money. This is about you, not him."
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't say anything. I would be like, "What are you doing?" You know, like, "What are you thinking? How does this play out?"
The
Um,
the phrase that, I don't know if it was like, if this was the phrase in Landmark or if it was just a particular leader that said it this way to me, but it was, "That which you cannot be with in yourself is," or no, "That which you cannot be with in others is what you can't be with in yourself."
yes.
So whenever I couldn't be with something in others, it had nothing to do with them. It had everything to do with me. It was
Yes.
always just whiplash. Okay, how is this my fault? How is this my fault
Yeah,
that
it's
I
this
think this way? I shouldn't be thinking this way.
or it's showing you an unhealed part, so go heal that. And what they used to say, the Debbie Ford people, she really popularized this, but I think it's part of a lot of these groups. She used to say, "If you spot it, you've got it." Because
Right? Like if you smelt it, you dealt it.
yeah, kinda, you know, if you otherwise, they believed, I believe, that um, if you were fully healed, like around money or something like that, you wouldn't even notice somebody spending recklessly. It wouldn't even like you wouldn't even see it.
Yeah.
Or maybe on a more esoteric level, it wouldn't even show up in your world
Yeah.
energetically.
Exactly. That's how it kind of lived for me.
Yeah.
This would never happen if I didn't have this going on in my head. I'm drawing this to me because I'm this way. And that's why life doesn't work out, is because I can't do all the right energetic drawing the right things to me and being wholly complete about everything so
Right,
that I can have it.
I haven't healed all of that, um, and it's, boy, is that a trap. It's such a trap, and it's such a it's again, maybe there are just things that are wrong, and if you look at it from a conscience perspective, sort of a morals, values perspective, if I think about if you are someone who does not have a steady source of income, you probably shouldn't be, spending $300 a week on Amazon. Like, that is just not smart.
Yeah.
But my training kept me from saying anything and also wanting to be part of the solution rather than the problem, wanting not to blame, which
Yeah.
is part of training in like communication, all of that made me shut down my own feelings of what was bad behavior. And that, included bad behavior toward me.
Mhm.
It was like, I'm, so busy analyzing, and it was so freeing to basically go, oh, the reason he's doing this has nothing to do with me. He actually fits the pattern. And that's when I really educated myself about the patterns of narcissists and sociopaths, etc. And here's an interesting thing about being complete. I did not trust him. So I figured out that the reason it wasn't working, I figured out that it was because he was a type of narcissist they call a covert narcissist, which I didn't know existed, but it's basically the ones who rely on more being a victim, and that's how they get attention
Right.
rather than I'm the greatest. The only kind of narcissist I knew was the kind who walks around going, I'm the greatest. I didn't know there was anything else, and he didn't. He was always poor me, and that's a type. So when I figured it all out and I started putting the pieces together and started looking at the behavior, one of the things that occurred to me is this is not a safe human being.
Mhm.
I do not know what he's actually capable of. We
Right.
hadn't been together that long, a couple of years. And I thought, I'm not gonna have I intuitively knew I wasn't gonna call him out on it because I did not feel like that was safe. And so
Mm.
basically, I left this house that I'm in now that we co-owned for a while to figure out my legal strategy to get him out of the house. And I
Good for
never
you.
and you know what, Lindsay? Didn't leave him a letter,
Yeah.
didn't have a conversation with him, never completed with him because I knew intuitively that if I tried to get complete, that what it would look like was me being manipulated.
Yeah, totally.
And
Him trying to turn it around on you.
it was hard because of my landmark training. It was literally like, I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, I can't just leave this. I can't just leave this hanging." And I was
Yeah.
like, and every expert that I, watched on YouTube and all of that, they're like, you can't do it.
Yeah.
They don't care. It's not safe. Go on with your life. Write a letter and burn it. But you are not gonna get complete with this person. They're not gonna give you that understanding that you desperately want. You need to give up your desire for it. And that was really, in some ways, that was really freeing, was just to be like, no, I'm leaving. And, it is massively incomplete and I can be complete with that.
Yeah, I feel like I don't think it's an accident that, part of it is letting narcissists get away with it or always having to go back to the narcissist to sort something out. It's like, I think narcissists have created this idea. It's a way for nothing to ever actually get solved, right?
No,
It's
it
just like a
won't.
loop that you get stuck in.
Because if you try to get complete with someone who is a disordered personality, and I'm not just talking about someone who's stressed or things like that, they are a disordered, dysregulated personality. That is
Mhm.
who they are in the world. It's not going to change no matter what you say. And what you're going to get probably most dominantly is word salad and gaslighting.
Yeah.
And you will leave less satisfied than when you started. So what's the point?
Yeah. But inside of Landmark, there's the distinction of gossiping, right? So you can only go to the person that you have the problem with.
I'm really glad you brought that up because the idea of no gossiping it's one of those things, maybe we need to think of, is there a category for this? Is there a word for this? Because it sounds really good and healthy,
Mhm.
right? It's like, yeah, who wouldn't want to be part of a community where there's no gossiping? But the truth is, as human beings, we really need to be able to process things.
Yes.
Right? We
Yeah.
need reality checks. We need the
Yeah.
kind of friends where we can say, is this normal? Because it
Yeah, we
doesn't
can't just have everything in our head be a conversation. We actually need to process it with someone else so we can fully realize how we feel and think about things.
absolutely, and women are more socialized for this than men. I'm not gonna say it's innate, I don't necessarily think it is, but we're certainly socialized to process with each other
Mhm.
around things. I think this is why women in general score higher on tests of what they call theory of mind, which is figuring out what other people are thinking.
Mm.
I was thinking about it at one point, and we're constantly oriented toward trying to figure out other people's motivation. And we're socialized to do that. And boys don't get socialized to do that in the same way.
Mhm.
So they don't have generally what the research has found is that especially straight men, um, I'll say something about that in a second, especially straight men, straight white men in particular, are rank the lowest in the ability to understand other people's motivations and feelings.
It's really
And I was,
interesting.
how do we get into this? We're talking about gossiping,
Oh, yeah.
that there's when it gets stopped in a community, and I've definitely heard about this in other cults where this is, really, really rigidly enforced. I don't think it was as rigidly enforced necessarily in Landmark. Part of what that shuts down is the ability to make meaning because we're
Oh.
making meaning with each other.
Interesting. And making meaning is an important part of being alive.
Yeah, being able to say, Lindsay, this thing just happened and it's bothering me and I'm not sure why. And then
Yeah.
you say, well, tell me more about it. What happened? What did they
Right.
say? And it's not really, gossiping kind of gets put in this very negative thing rather than that a percentage of it is processing.
But also meaning making is bad,
Yeah,
right? Like, we're not supposed to make meaning out of anything. We're that's like understanding is the booby prize and,
that's right. I don't think I ever bought that. I don't really know what it there's so these are what do they call them? Thought terminating cliches. That's a thought terminating cliche.
yeah.
Just like ride the horse in the direction he's going, you know, um no, and I think these were Werner, like, presented some of these as, like, similar to Japanese or Zen koans. You're not supposed to understand this, just be with it.
Yeah.
But this whole I mean, I remember hearing understanding is the booby prize so many times, but I could never really make sense of what that actually meant.
No.
Um, do you? Like, what does it mean
Well,
to you?
that's, being so young and hearing that, like, it's empty and meaningless, and it's empty and meaningless, and it's empty and meaningless, and understanding is the booby prize, and don't make don't make it mean anything. It was just like anything that I felt or thought was wrong,
Mm.
except that there was nothing wrong here. So it's like there was just a battle of conflicting ideas happening where it really did. It stopped me from thinking. It was like there's too many one-liners competing for domination in my head.
You've done that enough and you've internalized enough the messages that it's hard to deprogram yourself, and I think there's a lot of folks coming out of Landmark at this point that are sort of going, "Wait a minute, I did some of those things, and now, how do I feel about that? And, what's my responsibility really if I was one of the people that was creating stress for other or damage for other people?"
Yeah. Yeah, the moral injury of it, right? That's just something I've been thinking a lot about lately. What did I leave people with? What pressure, like, even like friends that I pressured into doing it, or people who I treated as less than because they weren't as enlightened as me. It just, yeah, the amount of actual separation it caused in my
Yeah.
friendships and relationships, like it really did put this wall between
Mhm.
me and people.
That makes sense. I've been
Yeah.
thinking about a couple of people that I knew. After I was in New York, I moved back to Minneapolis, and then I was in Introduction to the Forum Leaders program and various things, and assisted very, very heavily and did a lot of, like, supervising seminars and the communication workshop and assistant supervising forums like that.
Yeah.
Always needing to put together teams. And I've been thinking kind of recently that there were like a couple people, 2 or 3 people who I knew I could manipulate. I
Mm,
knew, I absolutely knew
yeah.
I can get this person. Doesn't matter that they've done every form in a row, and God knows if they even have a family life, but I know how to get them on my team, and they're an easy, they wanna please, and they're an
Yeah.
easy enrollment, and I'm just calling a face to mind right now,
Yep. I
and
can think of
I
it 2 people that popped ahead.
right?
That
And
popped into
I
my head.
know that was manipulative on
Yeah.
my part because, the pressure to be the good volunteer and, show up and do this right and all of that was bigger than any sort of moral care that I had for anyone.
Yeah.
There wasn't
Yeah.
room for that. S
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was like having less and less room for that was the goal. I felt I it's like it wasn't until probably the last 5 years that I started to go, "Were they training me to be a sociopath?" Like, really though, like, when I think about certain things, it was like, that was kinda training me to be sociopathic in how I interacted with people.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sort of laughing, but I do get it because being less empathetic, being less compassionate, not buying into other people's stories, that's how it was sold to us,
Yes.
is, uh, it's a strategy for survival
Yeah.
in that organization, and I think about, the it's only been, Lindsay, it's only maybe been in the last 2 years since Anne published her book, and all of this came flooding back, and I started reading all of these other, outrageous betrayal and all of getting in touch with all of you, that this has all come back. This was a long time ago. Um, but one of the things that I have carried for many, many years was my failure at enrollment, and
Mm,
that's why I was never a seminar leader or any. Also, I was pretty young. I mean, there was other younger people who were leading seminars, but it was because I was terrible at enrollment, and I think one of the reasons I always framed it as, you just didn't have the kind of courage that other people had. Other
yeah.
people were more courageous and, bold and all of that, and I look at that, and that could be true. I'm willing to own that. But I also think it was because when people told me they couldn't afford it, I believed them.
Same, same. I really bought into that whole money conversation thing, like, yeah,
Like, I'm not gonna tell you to go open a new credit card. Like,
no.
no. Like, I was probably bouncing checks at the 7-Eleven for $5 because I didn't have any money, and so
Yeah,
you're telling me it's just a conversation, but, my pantry's fairly bare because 'cause I'm spending all my time here, I'm not earning any money.
right?
And so
But
when
you have all the tools to be the most successful in the world. How is
But
that
I
possible,
didn't.
Anne?
I didn't have any tools for that. I
Yeah,
really didn't. And so when people would, show up with concerns or, anything, my compassion would kick in, and I just wouldn't push them past any particular point where I think people who were better at enrollment, they just didn't care.
yeah,
That's just a conversation, and what would be possible, they would just ignore it, where I would just be like, oh, I'd be thinking about whether I had literally, and I was pretty young again. I'd be
mhm.
literally thinking about whether I had any food at home, and I didn't because I was spending all my time at the center and none earning, limited time earning the living that I needed to earn. And
Ugh, God,
yeah,
that makes me feel so sad for that little Anne. Like,
yeah, it was an interesting time. I ended up marrying someone. There was this trope, and I'll kind of wrap it up. This isn't a long story, but there was a trope at the time. Tell me if this sounds familiar. Oh, when was this? It would have been probably about 1990 or so, right when I was kind of that's when I was sort of getting ready to be done. But
mm,
there was this idea that you could be with anyone, marry anyone, as long as you were committed to their commitments. So
mm,
you could have a deep sea diver and a mountain climber, and as long as you were committed to each other's commitments, that was enough for a like healthy marriage. So I married this guy that I had nothing in common with.
yeah, this is a familiar story in Landmark.
I bought that,
Yeah.
he's like, "We're gonna make it happen." I met him in a seminar and, ended and that was part of the beginning of the end because I ended up getting a real job.
Mm,
And as part and that was probably a good part of that marriage. He really did encourage me to get a real job and not just be assisting all the time, and so I did, and I did never, like, left Landmark. I just sort of faded away. I just
mhm,
ended up I had a job where I was traveling. I was doing on the road sales, um, and I think the big piece was I, realized after about 4 years, I think we were married for like 4 years, that he was a completely bad fit for me. Like, nothing in common and not a particularly intelligent human being, and
oh, no.
I know,
That's
not
the worst.
not good for me. And so I ended up getting divorced, and I remember one of the last seminars that I went to, and, somebody that I knew in Minneapolis who was a seminar leader, who had also recently gotten divorced, and she had heard that we were getting divorced, and she's like, "Don't do it, you need to figure out how to make this up. Divorce is absolutely the worst, and, you need to, like, use your skills to really make this work." And I remember looking at her, and she was probably maybe 15 years older than me or something of that then, and thinking, "Lady, you know nothing."
Yeah.
I still remember that, her being so heartfelt, and I'm just like, "No, I'm getting divorced." And I think it was that conversation that made me not go back. I just thought
Yeah.
these people don't know anything. They don't know anything about what I need or who I am.
Yeah, they're not operating, like, inside of reality.
No.
It's just, like, some nice ideas, but not doesn't actually fit with reality.
Right. This is not the right human being for me to be in a relationship with. I do not like it. He was borderline abusive. No.
Yeah.
You you can't just tell me from your plus you just got divorced. Like, what the heck a double standard is that?
That's it. Yeah. Well, and I think, like, one of the messiest divorces I ever saw was between 2 leaders in Landmark.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Well, that's my weird, funky
I know I could talk to you like, I've got, like,
oh, good.
4 or 5 more distinctions that I wanna talk to you about, but I think 2 hours is probably good for this one.
We'll come back in a,
Yeah,
down
yeah.
mood
That's for
and
next time though, or another conversation. I want to, maybe intrigue the audience the next time. Maybe we could talk about winning formulas. I would love to talk about how Landmark has these ideas that you have 3 or 4 events in your life that make up your personality, right? That's your identity, are these traumatic moments that happen in your life.
wow. Okay, that's good. Let's talk more about that, and maybe and part of it, and hopefully this came through is um you're fresher with it, and there's things that are coming back to me that I've not thought about in literally 40 years.
Yeah.
So,
Lucky you.
yeah, let's and definitely from the perspective of the brain. And one of the things that I see, and I know Landmark, I know Werner kind of got into talking about neuroscience and, various stuff. Then I had a couple of Landmark folks come through I teach a neuroscience program, and they're like, "You do not know anything."
Yeah.
And that would be an example of something where that's an interesting thought. It's not necessarily how the brain actually works. And I think that that's sort of interesting to me in the personal development space, that there's been a lot of thoughts about how we construct who we are, how we deal with things, that we have more evidence now about how actually incredibly complex,
Mhm.
malleable, and flexible our brains are.
Yes, the flexibility. That's what we'll talk about next time
Okay,
too.
perfect.
Thank you so much for this
My pleasure.
conversation. I really love talking to you.
Me
It's
too. I
so
love talking
nice
to you.
to like, because you relate, because you've been through it, and then you have all this fabulous knowledge of like reality. Yeah. So thank you so much, Anne, and
You're
thank
welcome.
you for everyone tuning in again and following along on this train of thought of what did Landmark's teachings actually teach us, and what did it do to our brains?
Such
Yeah,
a endless conversation. Thank you, Liz.
endless.
My pleasure.